You, me, and HIFMB. Stories of Science and the Sea.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the HIFMB podcast. And today I talk to Meren, or Murat Eren from Turkey, the head and leader of our new ecosystem data science group. So he's the second group leader that you hear. Meren is a computer scientist and microbial ecologist, and that's exactly where he sees his group established, so at the intersection between computer science and microbiology. Amongst so many topics, we talk about mentoring in depth. He has started a blog entry which is called Mentorship in Life Sciences, Voices of Mentees, where he actually has done an anonymous survey that mentees, so early career scientists, have filled out about their mentoring and the mentoring that they've received. And through that, he gains so many insights that we discuss. So this is really valuable both to mentees looking into getting mentorship in the future, so getting a supervisor in the future, and to mentors who want to improve their supervision and mentoring. And like with any guest, I talk to him about his academic life and through the many turns that he has taken, how he got to the position where he is today. So without further ado, I give you Meren. Welcome everybody to the next episode of the HIFMB podcast. And today I have Meren from our ecosystem data science group, the leader of it. So the second pillar in this podcast that you're going to hear talk, the second PI after Kim Peters. Hi.
Hello. Hi. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no worries. It's been a long time coming. So the ecosystem data science group.
Yes.
What's the status? Like when did you start it? And yeah.
I think I officially started February 15th of 2022. Yes, we're in 23.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a year actually.
Oh wow.
The official start. And the status is we're still building. We're trying to find out about ourselves. We hiring took much longer than expected. So the group is just coming together actually.
Yeah. Did you take students from your previous job or?
Not quite. We decided as a group that those PhD students I've been working with so far at the University of Chicago would finish there.
Mm-hmm.
And they would move on to their lives. And some were interested in exploring how would it look like to work here in Germany with me. So Florian Turgodet and Eva Vesely, who is now a PhD student in Chicago, but they will join me here. But generally, we started everything from scratch pretty much.
Okay. And how big is the group now?
Currently, we are 5 people.
Okay.
While there are many more people at the University of Chicago that I still advise and work with.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are soon going to be 5 people officially.
Right. Okay. And that's the vision going forward. Is that group size? Because
That's my wish.
Yeah.
I at some point my group was a little too big at the University of Chicago. That made me realize that my ability to help people progress in their projects or mentor them diminishes as the number of people increase in the group, obviously.
Yeah.
So I hoped for a smaller group going forward, maybe 6 people max, and try to establish something like that. Here is one of my goals, but we will see how things go.
Sweet. Cool. And so your nickname is super interesting. There's a story, a little bit of a backstory I heard already. Meren, how did that come about?
It's more than a nickname, actually. Now I feel like it's my name. When people call me Murat, which is my original name, I guess, I feel awkward in a way.
All right.
One of the reasons why I always had nicknames throughout my life is because a lot of people in Turkey is called Murat, especially from my age group.
Yeah.
I don't know what the reason for that, but maybe some famous actors or Ottoman emperors. There were 4 of them, 4 Murats, and they had all different personality traits.
Oh, I see.
So you have a lot of reasons to choose one of those, and end up calling your, kid with the same name. And there were so many Murats in Turkey at my time. I even had a classroom mate whose name was Murat Eren. So even the last name was matching.
Yeah.
So one option was to give some of the Murats nicknames, and I ended up having a lot of nicknames. And some of them were very upsetting to me. For instance, people for a long time called me armut. It's a word in Turkish that means pear, the
like
fruit.
The fruit, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know where it came from, but I hated that, and I was like, I don't want to be called, this, but I had no power over it. Whatever. So years go by. I start university in 1998, and the systems administrator, who has had a huge influence on my life anyway, Necdet Yücel, he says, we need an email address for you. What's your username going to be? And I'm like, I have no idea. Email, username, none of these make any sense. And he says, okay, you know what? We're going to combine the first letter of your name. We'll call you Meren. Meren at university.edu.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And then that kind of stuck. When people saw that username, they started calling me Meren. One thing led to another. After like 20 years now, I basically go by Meren in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Does your wife call you that too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Even my family does that. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. And so your ecosystem data science group, it says on your CV that it's established at the intersection between computer science and microbiology.
Yes.
So this is very much what you are, right?
Yes. Yes, indeed. I am trained as a computer scientist, but I don't have any formal training in microbiology or microbial ecology apart from the postdoc I did with Mitsogin at the Meren Biological Laboratory and so on. But over the years, I learned a lot. Now I can actually introduce myself to someone as a microbial ecologist, and they wouldn't be able to tell that I don't have a formal education. That's what it means to, I think, advance in science in a way. You can pretend to be someone until it's kind of true.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And yes, so you're very, I think at the core, or at least it looks like it from the outside, at the core of you is mentoring is very important to you.
Yes. I don't know how to phrase it well, but I realized over the years that that it's an extremely important aspect of what we do. I think so. I look at my career, I look at my past, and none of the experiences I had early in life would have predicted the outcome of me as a person.
Yeah.
That has been a very, somewhat interesting and unexpected journey with a lot of ups and downs. But I realized at some point, looking back, the only reason I did not continue doing some of the things that I've been doing at earlier times in my life, younger ages, and ended up turning into a relatively more decent person. And with, I have a job and everything now, and I do something that I'm very interested in life and so on, was because there were people at very critical points in my journey that influenced me in ways that I couldn't have achieved by myself. And those people that I, call in a way mentor, are the only reason I am here today. That serendipitous series of events that bring you somewhere, and you meet someone who extend their help, and then you end up going one level up, and it goes on and on and on. So I recognize that it's extremely important to realize when it is your turn to do that job. And that's a huge responsibility, of course. And that realization doesn't help. It doesn't make anything any easier. So I slowly came to the realization that now I'm someone, people who are early career scientists come to me, and I turn into de facto a mentor in their lives. And so this brings additional responsibilities for me and for others as well. And so one of the important things about mentorship is to recognize when you start turning into one, and also to recognize that you need one, and the kinds of traits you should expect to find in someone you are looking up to, and so on.
Yeah. So that kind of sparked the idea for the piece of work that we're going to talk about today. It's a blog post by you on the mentorship in life sciences, and actually the voices of the mentees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And thank you. I'm taking this off.
Yeah.
I'm on the hot seat now. It's getting higher and higher in temperature here. Okay.
Yeah.
So first, thanks a lot for bringing that work up. That is a completely unofficial piece of work that is not published anywhere or peer-reviewed or anything. But I did that because I thought that. Let me step back and tell you why I even started doing that. In 2021, I think, I was awarded by the American Society of Microbiology the environmental Microbiology Award. This award is given every year to one scientist who has made contributions to environmental microbiology. And I was proposed to this award by a few colleagues of mine, and this was a very important turning point of my career, I think, because this made me realize that the medical field that I was involved in officially was not necessarily the only option I had in life. I actually could really put much more effort into environmental microbiology because I thought this award is a recognition of my attempts to contribute to that field. So that changed my life quite a bit. That's in part I'm here today because of that award instead of a Department of Medicine somewhere. And I was asked to give a speech, and then I start thinking about what am I going to talk about. It's a 10 minutes talk. You can't be really talking about something extensively. And while I was trying to put the talk together, I realized that, okay, I'm going to talk about the lab. And then, what led to this award. What work did we do? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, this actually is not something that I can claim to myself even. I don't even deserve this award in a way by myself. This is an award that recognizes the contributions of all the people who has been working with me, who invested their time and intellect and, trust into our work. And who am I to receive an award and go there and talk about, So that kind of didn't make a lot of sense to me. Yeah. And then I also realized that, there is nothing I can do about this because I am going to be the only person who is going to have the right to list this award on their CVs. So how do you even give anything back in return to those who have been working with you and so on? So it's a difficult philosophical challenge. With that, I realized that this is actually a commonly occurring pattern. We see all these big names and fancy scientists, especially in the United States, the superstardom of individual scientists, which I found very frustrating while I was there. That is always the result of many people who work very hard and sometimes fail, and they pay the price with their own careers underneath these big names. And when they are successful, those who look at the progress of science always recognize these big names. So it's like there's this economy, very hierarchical economy. In that sense, I think recognition is a very hierarchical thing. Yeah. And I knew a lot of very sad stories, if you will, where mentor-mentee relationships fail. And those who entrust their almost entire career in the hands of these scientists sometimes pay a heavy price when things don't work. So the thing is, for a professor or for a big name, a few projects failing is not necessarily the end of the lab or their reputation or anything. Most people don't even hear that those projects failed, but those who have been trying to push those things forward pay a big price. So there's this disproportional part of this equation. So I decided that I would take the 10 minutes I was given by my mentees in a way through this award to talk about mentor-mentee relationships, to tell people to their faces, all the professors and whoever was going to be there, that things are not working in general, and unless we pour effort into it, trying to better ourselves, they are not going to work out of the box. And I thought the most convincing evidence for that would be to let mentees, early career researchers, talk about their experiences with their mentors with the protection of anonymity. And so I put together this survey. In just a few days, there were many responses, and then I wrote some programs to visualize and analyze these data. And that's the result of that work.
How did you advertise it? Was it just on Twitter, or
just on Twitter?
How do you have such a high Twitter reach? You're quite famous on Twitter, I would say.
I'm not sure if that's true, actually.
Okay, right.
I do have a lot of followers, but the vast majority of those followers are coming from the days from my writing in Turkish. So this is like those followers are coming from 12 years ago, and not many of them are scientists. There are more than 50,000 people follow me on Twitter, but I would bet 40,000 of them at least are Turkish people who are like, what is this guy talking about? Or maybe they don't use their accounts anymore, so they don't even remove me from their list of people they follow. And I think the reason why so many people followed me was because I was kind of outspoken about certain topics, and I had a photography blog back in the day. I wish I could go back, But essentially, Twitter algorithms recognize me as someone to suggest to new people when they join. I think that's my way of explaining it.
Right.
But,
okay.
Yeah, but science community, I had close ties with them as well over the years. When I switched to English completely as the language of communication. Yeah.
So it's partly because of your blogging and because of your outspokenness. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, and then so you took the survey and the way you analyzed it, I'm looking at it now, is incredible. Like let's start with your with even your definition of early career researchers. I find that strikes a nerve with me. It's exactly how I would define it. It's those who are advised and do not have typical job security. So it's not really tied to a year and how many years you are out of your PhD. But exactly. Very true, I think. And I will put this into the show notes, the entire survey, because I can't go through it all now. But it's incredible visions you pull out of this and incredible tips that you pull out of this as well. So, for instance, that the group size sweet spot is like 5 to 10 people, probably based on the survey results and how you put the emotion of the students taking, or of the early career researchers taking these surveys, how you put their emotion into that, and with a lot of them having or quite a disturbing number. I think it was like 8% have a very negative.
That, for instance, that 8%, that small percentage of people having very negative relationships with their mentors, had initially made me very happy, realizing that the vast majority of people seem to have not very negative experiences. I mean, that's, I guess, human nature. We look at these numbers, even though, especially life sciences keep teaching us that the statistical significance of numbers don't necessarily mean their functional significance in complex environmental conditions. You still have this byproduct of, I guess, our dealings with numbers, that when I saw that the vast majority of people seem to be doing okay, I felt very good, I have to admit. And I even noticed, I think, in the blog post, because then I found it extremely embarrassing to think like that.
You wrote this very well.
Yeah, because when you read the experiences of those people who had very negative interactions with their mentors, their lives are ruined, basically. And this is absolutely unacceptable. It should be 0%, which is a very, of course, high bar to pass, but that's what we should be craving for, I think.
I mean, for you, what were the biggest? Or first of all, how many people took the survey?
I think something around 700. If I remember correctly.
Okay. Then for you, what was the biggest takeaway of all of this?
Biggest takeaway. It's very difficult to summarize. These problems are extremely difficult to address fully, I think. But I'm always thinking. So on the one hand, I'm a perfectionist. I will not recognize any solution that will not address something 100%. It's just, one of my shortcomings. But then over the years, I learned that if something is really improving things a lot, it doesn't have to be a theoretically perfect solution. It's still, you can rely on it. And if people's careers are at stake, imperfect solutions that still improve things dramatically, I think, are very viable options for all of us to at least give a chance. And one of that, I realized, my main takeaway is most of the interactions that go haywire between mentees and mentors are going that way because of the poorly aligned expectations from both sides. We all have the best intentions, of course, both mentors and mentees, and we all find ourselves in situations that we're not prepared for, often in science especially. But addressing the problem of manageable expectations, I think, is one of the best ways to make sure that we're minimizing the risk of running into a wall in the long run. Which is a responsibility on the mentor, I think, initially. For instance, I suggested in that post, and I try to convince people around me, and I will hopefully at some point also start a campaign here at the HIFMB to convince anyone who has mentorship duties to write a public statement about what kind of a mentor they are, as far as their opinion is concerned. It doesn't even have to be 100% accurate. One can write, I don't micromanage. This is how I work. This is the meetings every week I will have with you, or whatever your expectations are. What's your paper writing strategy? What happens to corresponding authorships? What happens when someone doesn't want to appear in the lab meeting or present? Or what happens, all these truly little things, but that all of which give small ideas about the other person, about who you are and how you conduct your business as a mentor, I think would help dramatically to those who consider joining a lab.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's an initial filter where completely, people who match so poorly would not even attempt. And then, of course, there must be a stage where the mentee lets the mentor what kind of a person they are, how they work, what's the most beneficial way to support them, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this writing a public document about your mentorship practice and how you see yourself is very important.
Yep.
Extremely difficult, but it helps you think about these things carefully.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put something out that keeps you publicly accountable for your actions. Then someone can say, look, you told me and you say here that this is how you would conduct your business with me, but it's been 1 month, we didn't have a single meeting, so what's going on?
Yeah. I looked at yours on your website, and do you keep updating, or in the beginning stages of writing it, did you keep updating it?
Yes, exactly. So that started when I started at the University of Chicago. I started document, and there are even Git logs. This is on GitHub, so you can even see the history of this document.
Yeah, nice.
But we kept updating it based on, new people join, and we discussed certain things, and I realized necessity to clarify a certain point and so on. But it hasn't been updated since I moved to Germany. I also put a note up there that this, once the group catches its breath and knows what it is about, we will sit together and try to put something together.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you come up with like a lab culture document together in Chicago as well?
I wrote the drafts, but I discussed it with everyone, and I made sure that the versions were accessible to them before it was more public on our webpage. Of course, these things are difficult to do once there's a group that is established. So an ideal situation, I think, is where you start developing document early on in your career in such a way that anyone who approaches you are somewhat along the same lines of thinking with you, so they will not ask for significant changes in your practices.
Yeah.
For instance, I am so not a micromanager, but I did work with people who demanded micromanagement for their own success, and I did my best. But if I had the document ready by then, probably they would have been like, this is not the right person for me to...
Right. Yeah, this is incredible. Like the amount of information you pull out of the survey about the strengths and shortcomings of mentors is rang true with me. And I found this very helpful, that you need to create, as a mentor, you need to create an environment where it's possible to approach you and to discuss feedback about your mentoring. And obviously, the two big ones, or the one big one, is the code of conduct document or a lab culture document. Had other ways of making it easy to raise concerns with you? Other than
so first of all, I learned a lot through the survey about my own practices and my own shortcomings as a mentor. For instance, I never asked people whether I was able to give them the kind of support they needed. I never asked if there were any particular things that I needed to change or try to change with my interactions with them. So I now believe that asking those questions are very important, at least once a year, because it was very interesting that in the survey, even throughout the entire period of mentor-mentee relationship, if the mentee were asked at least once whether they were happy with the mentorship they were receiving, those interactions largely led to positive outcomes in their entirety. So this means that not the frequency, perhaps the most important, but the thought, the way we see ourselves and those who work with us. How do we position ourselves and them together in a group? That somehow has to be present. So, and I think one significant challenge that all of us suffer in science, regardless of career stage, is that every next stage of science requires you to learn about things that you have never been prepared to. For instance, from PhD to postdoc, postdoc to group leadership or assistant professorship, and from there to professorship. I mean, these are significant changes in one's life. We don't recognize it when we're at a given stage, that going up is going to change everything. And most mentors find themselves in these positions with zero preparation on how to deal with people who rely on you. And we all know about the shortcomings of science historically in general, the inequality when it comes to representation of diverse cultures and backgrounds and so on. So all these things add into a mixture where you have uneven proportion of people in different stages of the hierarchy is not uniform. And therefore you end up, generally speaking, you end up with a crowd of mentors who have no idea how to deal with certain cultures, certain issues, and so on. And different countries have different priors that influence how people see themselves in the long run. In the US, you try to become a superstar. In Europe, you have other priorities if you're a young assistant professor level scientist. So they all play into this. But I think the least we can do, those of us who find themselves in positions of power of any kind, this could be a postdoc or a PhD student advising a younger person, an undergraduate researcher, for instance. We need to recognize that moment and think about what we're doing and what is it that we could be doing better, given that now there are people who are relying on us for their own futures.
And this code of conduct, I think, or the document, thinking about the document, will start that trickle-down effect.
It's independent of the outcome. I think attempt into that is enough for one to start their own journey, intellectual journey, into recognizing who they are or who they wish to be, because that's what the document is. You write down what you wish to see, and you then fill those shoes on the long run. So it's basically, we're creating a mold of whatever sounds plausible to us, and then we try to obey those wishes that we put forward.
Exactly. I was so incredibly lucky through my career that I had really good mentors, I think, and but I've met so many people who have had the opposite, and everything stands and falls in academia with good mentorship, I think, or good supervision.
And there's something really to think about there very carefully. People like us who managed to make it this far should recognize that perhaps the only reason we made it this far is because we run into the right people, not because we were better than those who failed. If we can admit that, if we can recognize that, then you realize that, well, today I'm here because of all those people, and so what am I doing now? What is my role now here to kind of, in a way, I don't like to use this word, but kind of deserve this spot, since nothing is deserved when you think about it, if serendipity is involved.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that goal of turning those 8% that had a very negative experience into zero is the best aspiration we need. Perfect.
Thank you very much for discussing this with me. It's very helpful to hear that it resonates with other people as well.
Oh, definitely. So much. It's definitely have a look at it, everyone, to appreciate the full glory of all of it. But let's talk about you a little bit for a minute as well. Scrolling up through the publications. So you started your academic career in Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering in Turkey, and I will butcher this name. Çanakkale?
Çanakkale.
Oh, Çanakkale. Okay. I'm going. Okay, yeah, you started in 1998, and then is this where you're from?
No, Çanakkale is it's not at all. But so what happened is I had no intention to even go to Çanakkale. In Turkey, you take a general exam. Like 1 million students take it, and you get a point based on your score. Then you can make selections of departments or universities. Some people prioritize where they want to live. You put all these universities in Istanbul, different departments, or some people prioritize what they want to study, and they put those departments from different universities and so on. I don't know if these things changed. It's been a long time since the last time I was in Turkey, but essentially it was the thing that we did when I was younger. And I was an extremely bad student in high school.
Okay.
I didn't even go to the vast majority of high school school days throughout my tenure at high school. And instead I played music or whatever high schoolers do. So I was very underprepared to that examination, and I did poorly as well.
Mm-hmm.
But right before I took that exam, I realized the existence of computers. And someone introduced me to a computer game called Quake. And it's a first-person shooter game. And I just couldn't believe that I was looking at another person in a virtual environment who could shoot me with different guns, and I could chase that person and so on. I was so impressed. Like, imagine that, you have never seen computers before, if you can imagine that. And then all of a sudden, the first time you experience computers is through a first-person shooter game, and you are just losing your mind. How is this even conceivable? How is this possible? And I asked them, I said, what is it that I should study in life in order to be able to do this all day, every day, without being judged by other people? And he said, well, you can do computer engineering. And then I put all the computer engineering from all over the country, and I managed to get into this one.
Okay.
That's why I was at Çanakkale, not because I'm from there.
Right. Okay. So is this because I noticed then straight from that you went into a PhD in computer science?
Yes. It looks straight from that, but actually a lot happened in between. There's a 3-year gap or 4-year gap during which I worked for the Scientific Research Council of Turkey, not as a scientist, but as an engineer to develop an operating system, a Linux-based operating system initially for Turkish army, but then extended to general government use. And so I spent some time there, and then I came to the US, where I started my PhD.
Oh, okay. So, but there was no need for you to do a master's or something in?
No, I did get a master's degree, but it is not required in the US. In general, in the US, you don't get a master's. You start a PhD, and if PhD doesn't go well, sometimes people ask you, how about we give you a master's and you leave early?
I see. Okay, right.
But it was not even intentional. I did not intend to do a PhD. I never felt like a scientist until, I think, 2010, actually, even long after I started my PhD.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I went to the US for personal reasons, and I wanted to be a photographer in the United States. And I failed at that very poorly. I failed at photography. I failed at music. I ended up a scientist because I failed in many other things. This is the truth. But I went to the US for irrelevant reasons, but then this professor found me and asked me to join his lab because he knew my work from Turkey and learned that this developer moved to New Orleans, and basically that's how everything started. But until then, I had no idea about science and so on. So I was a very bad PhD student too.
How did he? Yeah. Okay. How did he find you to begin with?
Yeah, New Orleans was a small. I think he was. This is my first PhD advisor, which went horribly bad. Actually, he fired me 3 years after I started a PhD with him. So I think he needed a programmer to solve a very serious network programming challenge. It included classification of probabilistic signals over a network of computers to feed back to a nanopore experiment environment. It's all molecular interactions and nanopores. So he did a programmer that was not easy to find, and he knew that there was a new programmer in town. And so that was his motivation, I think.
Right, okay.
And I didn't know any English back then. So I started in his lab and learned a lot of English.
Okay.
And along with that, I started to recognize some interesting things that, science was an interesting thing overall. But my ability to speak my mind in English was not the best thing that happened to me in that lab. And that's partially why he ended up having to fire me.
Okay.
So it was kind of an interesting, again, ups and downs, that could have been the end of my career.
Yeah.
And then I ran into another mentor in the same institution who took me under his wings, and he nurtured me to become a microbial ecologist. And in 1 year, I finished my PhD in his lab, and I didn't put a single paper from the previous 3 years. And I could completely change my career trajectory thanks to that guy who didn't do anything but to try to help me. It wasn't a lot of effort on his part, but had a huge influence on my life.
Yeah.
So, going back to partially the topic we were talking about, I run into one very bad mentor and then one very good mentor, and
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you list this as postdoctoral education in microbial ecology. Is that what then made you move to Massachusetts?
Yes, Woods Hole Marine Biological Laboratory. It's a very nice institution for marine life, to study marine life. And there I met Mitch Sogan, a very prominent scientist in microbial ecology, molecular evolution. And that was the next luckiest thing that happened to me, because Mitch was towards the end of his career. He was already very successful and he didn't need anything from anyone at that point. And for some reason, he wanted to work with me. And he was the next boost in my life that made me a good scientist. I learned how to write from him. I learned how to be rigorous from him, and so on. And actually, he's the reason I'm here today, because he literally suggested me to apply to this position.
Oh, wow.
And I did, yes.
Nice. Were you in, how long were you in Woods Hole again?
4 years.
Okay, right. And while you were there, he suggested the...
No.
Okay.
After years, we kept in touch. When I was a professor at the University of Chicago, he's like, there's this going on there. You should think about it.
Wow.
With some information from Antje, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and so Woods Hole, but you became a fellow there, and it says you're still...
I still am, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Nice.
I'm an ambassador of Marine Biological Laboratory everywhere.
Yes. Perfect. And then, okay, so your first assistant professor, I think I'm a bit shaky on the different stages in the US, so assistant professor, associate, and full?
Assistant professor is similar to group leadership.
Right.
Junior professor or group leader, more commonly referred to Europe. Often you get your PhD, you can immediately start an assistant professorship. In some disciplines, it's more common. For instance, statistics, you don't do postdocs. Generally, you just start an assistant professorship.
Okay.
In life science or computer science, it's more common that you do a postdoc or 2 or 3 postdocs sometimes, depending on what you think you need. Because postdoc is the time. It's very different in Europe. In the United States, postdoc positions are seen to be extremely temporary. So you stay in one place 2 to 3 years, and then you go to the next one until you feel you are ready to apply for faculty positions to become an assistant professor.
Okay.
And then this usually takes 4 to 6 years, assistant professorships. And then if you're on tenure track, you apply for tenure, and then at the end of if you're successful, then you become an associate professor, which takes a few years, sometimes forever. But then people become full professors in most cases after a few years of that.
And you did that for 7 years, I think, or 6.5.
6 years at the University of Chicago as an assistant professor.
Yeah.
When I realized that HIFMB was a serious option for me, I asked the University of Chicago to stop evaluating my tenure case, because I certainly was not going to stay anymore.
Yeah.
So, but at that time I was being evaluated for tenure at the end of the 6 years. Yeah.
And would you have stayed if the post in Germany wouldn't have come up, or any similar ones?
Sorry, say it again.
Would you have stayed? Since they were evaluating.
Well, no. I think it was obvious that we were not going to stay in the United States.
Yeah, okay.
Even before, when I was at my 4th, 5th year at the University of Chicago, when my partner Jessica moved to Chicago, we realized that this wasn't going to last very long for us. So we, in principle, we decided to leave, but we didn't know where we would go.
Okay.
The idea of leaving was always there, but the place was missing, and HIFMB came up, and actually this is the only place I applied to. And I didn't cast a broad net and try everything until something comes up. Yeah. It was a very targeted approach, and I'm very happy that everything worked.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yes.
So you spent how many years in total in the US?
It feels like forever, but I think it was more like maybe 15 years or 12 years. Yeah. Something. I'm very bad at, when it comes to years, I'm very bad at them.
Yeah, okay.
It becomes most obvious when you ask me, how old do you think this person is? And I say something like 22 to 70. So I am not 100% sure, but I think it's more than 10 years.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw in your publications in your publications list at the top you have this Google Scholar page serves as an automatic updated list of publications. That's really handy. A handy tip. Thank you. In many ways, it's a really good CV that you can take as a mold, I think, to put yours after, or to mold yours after. It's incredibly helpful.
Thanks a lot.
You're also involved in a lot of open source projects, right?
Yes.
And were you involved in everyone's developments? Or?
Yes. So those that are listed there are projects that I started with my colleagues or by myself. But I've been involved in many more open source projects than those that are listed there. Mm-hmm. I think I was an open source software developer before I was anything. So during my undergrad, 1998, 1999, I learned about the existence of Linux operating system. And from there, I proceeded to erase all my data mistakenly while trying to install it and so on. And as a punishment, I decided to learn that system very well and so on.
Okay.
And that dramatically helped my career, I think. As a computer person, I learned programming, I learned computer architecture, I learned all the details of software world in a way.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give something back. I joined associations for Linux and so on in Turkey and tried to be an open source person. And it still continues. Every software product my group creates are open source, licensed with general public license, which makes it yours as much as it is ours.
Yeah.
So it's just an amazing way to, I think, share ideas and software products.
I think so, yeah.
And it also reflects our stance towards our science. It is also open, fully open. We create reproducible bioinformatics workflows and try to explain to people how we exactly did certain things beyond the papers we write. So those who are inspired by our work could do the same thing to different data sets by themselves, using similar footsteps.
Yeah, this is also visible through the survey we talked about in the beginning. All the data are available, and you can take them, analyze them any way you want to.
Yeah.
This is great. Also, I noticed in the miscellaneous section of your CV that you have a healthy obsession with troubleshooting, debugging, and problem solving. I love that.
Well, that healthy obsession, I think it's a little too generous. Yes, I am quite obsessed with neat things. So for instance, I am not the best programmer I know. I know many very, very good programmers. But when I write a piece of code or a paragraph or a sentence, I crave for perfection. You know, the obsession I mentioned at the beginning, which is not necessarily healthy. And I think as I age, I get better. I let a lot of imperfect things go from my desk. Is a function of decreasing amount of time that I can invest in them, but whatever. Yeah, I do have an obsessive relationship with those. That's true.
What's your programming language of choice?
Python.
Python,
Yeah, Python is extremely powerful. For beginners, easy to understand syntax, a very large standard library that you can start doing things with small amount of code. And also its breadth. You can do web programming to create web pages, or you can do systems programming, extremely low-level stuff to deal with operating systems or things. You can implement things that don't yet exist and be high performance and helpful to others and so on. So it's a very versatile programming language. It's a modern one. Yeah. But you can also use it like the way you would use a programming language like Perl, solely for scripting and solving problems quickly and so on. So it's extremely useful, I think.
Do you think it'll ever replace the stardom of R or
stardom?
But, well,
okay.
At least in my bubble.
So I have to I guess say this out loud at some point in my life. I do hate R. The syntax is horrible. It's extremely counterintuitive. I mean, what a mess. What a mess. Yeah, but of course, R is an amazing environment for statistical analyses. You know, there are so many statisticians created, so many packages. It's almost like we have to, you know, it's almost like Facebook. We have to go on Facebook to see what our friends from high school are doing now and so on. So it's a, you know, kind of, you have to do that clearly. Then you have to deal with Facebook. It's kind of like that. You have to use these amazing tools written by statisticians, but then you have to deal with R. So I use R quite a lot. And I don't think Python and R are quite comparable to one another. They will not replace one another, I think. In our group, we do most of our data cleaning and visualization in R, for instance. But Python infrastructures yield useful, good outputs from complex data, so we can go into R with them.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I think that kind of a workflow helped us quite a bit, and I think it's a meaningful way to, find a good balance between one to use Python, one to use R, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And otherwise, on your computer, you use Linux, like I picked up.
Well, I shouldn't say this. I have so many friends from I don't know, if they probably would disown me if they heard that I'm using Mac now. Mac computers and Apple, Mac operating systems on Apple computers. So, it has a Unix feeling to it, and its core largely on Unix-like. So it helps me find my way around it and use it like a Linux system.
Mm-hmm.
But then years ago, it was very difficult to deal with peripherals with Linux. If you have a printer, forget about it. You need to recompile the Linux kernel multiple times until you hit the right driver, or you never use it anymore. So I think I use Apple computers because of the convenience.
Yeah.
But I no longer use Linux actually.
Okay. All right. And to bring this to a close, we're almost at an hour. It also says in your CV that you're an average bass player.
Yes. Very average, yes.
Very average? I don't know, 10 plus years sounds like it's some amount of experience.
Yeah, that was a lot of experience actually. And I think one of the most impressive things about the 15 years of bass playing was how I managed to remain an average musician.
Right. Is that the same for, because it also says fairly okay photographer, 10 plus
No,
years.
actually I was quite competitive in photography. And yes, I no longer am able to do that due to time constraints, but I really loved photography, and I did things that I liked, which is very rare.
Okay.
So
Sweet. And the last sentence comes with exceptional communication skills for a computer scientist, obviously.
Yes.
That I can completely attest to now. You're a great communicator. Thank you so much for coming along.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Do you have anything that we haven't mentioned that you want to highlight in the end?
Not really.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed this, and I would suggest anyone who gets an invitation from Jan to attend to the podcast, I would strongly encourage them to say yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Want to dive deeper? Surf over to hifmb.de or follow us on Twitter at hifmb_OL.